It's time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beem Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
Greetings, everybody. Happy Wednesday, and the rolling there. It's just Beem Weeks tonight. There's no Stephen Gies. He's out west. He's been sending me pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge and other places around San Fran, so he's having fun while I'm sitting here manning the studio. Tonight, we are going to have some fun. We're bringing back a guest that's been on here before, but tonight is episode 38, so we're going to have some fun. As usual, if you want to join in on the discussion, you can go over to Twitter and use the hashtag Fresh Ink Group. That's hashtag Fresh Ink Group. If you use that, you can put your comment or your question out there, and I will see it. I will be monitoring that during the course of the show. And if you want to call in, just dial 516-453-9902. Once again, that is 516-453-9902. Now, if you missed any of our previous episodes, or if you didn't get a chance to listen to this one live, if that's the case, you're not hearing me anyway. But if you missed any of our shows, you can catch them in the archive. And there are several places to go to. You can go to beemweeks.com, stephengies.com, freshinkgroup.com, and at all three of those, just click on the podcast tab on those websites, and you'll find all of our episodes. You can also find us at YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in Fresh Ink Group, and our channel will pop up. And while you're there, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button and help us out, help us grow this audience. And we're also on Spotify. So go over to Spotify, just type in Voice of Indie, all one word, and every episode we've done, including this one after the show, will pop up, and you can check it out. Now, don't forget, we also have the Fresh Ink Group Short Story Contest. If you're a writer, many in our audience are writers, really good writers. We know who you are. Send your short stories in. Go over to freshinkgroup.com and click on the contest button, and there's all the information there that you need, and you can go ahead and send us your short stories, and we'll make stars out of you. Okay, tonight's guest, Widetrack, is a musical partnership of Ron Tippin and his 16-year-old, soon-to-be 17-year-old son, Zach. The duo's alternative prog sound strikes a balance between the moody, deep undertones of such progressive groups as Pink Floyd, Radiohead, Porcupine Tree, the Mars Volta, etc., with the heaviness of alternative and hard rock bands like Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age, Tool, Black Sabbath, among others. Beginning in January 2019, the father-son team wrote, recorded, and released one new song each month, marking Zach's debut as a songwriter and a recording engineer, as well as the first time Ron has written Widetrack music with another person. The 12 songs comprise Widetrack's fourth album, The Unwakening, released on April 23rd, 2020, which also happened to be Zach's 16th birthday. The band was in the process of booking live dates through 2020, but those plans were put on hold due to the pandemic crisis. Presently, they are writing and recording songs for their fifth album while preparing to play live shows when they return. And with that, welcome to the show, guys. It is great to have you guys back again.
Hey, Beem, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty swell.
All right. So this is a return visit. What's new since the last time you guys were on with us?
Well, Zach's the busy guy, so I'm going to let Zach take that one.
Shoot, I mean, how long has it been now?
It's been a few months.
3, 4, 5 months. Well, I certainly am busy. I quite enjoy being busy, though. You know, I relish the opportunities to play whatever kind of music, different styles of music. It just really fills me up with joy, you know. I like doing, musical productions and marching band, and whatever else my school offers. I'm staying busy with that type of stuff and picking up little pieces to put into Widetrack, and whatever other projects I pursue separate from school. I think it's very interesting, the things that stick with you when you get a unique musical experience, or a unique experience at all. It's always weird, the stuff that you take away, like even the simple things like the order that you set stuff up, or the way you think about a song, or that type of stuff. So I've been growing as a musician, not to put it so dramatically, but just really enjoying my time that I have as a kid with no responsibilities.
Now you mentioned marching. You mentioned marching band. So are you in the marching band at school?
I am. I'm a section leader, snare drummer.
All right.
And we've got a really, really solid marching band program, a really great director. So lots of good insight and experience. It's a very, very good program. Lots of good people. Very thankful to be part of it.
Yeah, I bring that up because it reminds me of Tommy Lee, the drummer of Motley Crue. He's a really good drummer. I'm not a huge Crue fan. I was back in the day, but he's a really good drummer. And he started out in high school in the marching band. And I remember here about 15 years or so ago, he did a short little reality series where he was going back to school, and he went to the University of Nebraska, I believe it was. And he joined the marching band and played drums in the marching band, and he couldn't keep up. So for people who think because he's this great drummer in a rock band, it would be a breeze to get into a marching band, it wasn't. It took him a while to catch on, and he even said he was shocked that he was even able to eventually, keep pace, but because it was so hard. It was completely out of, what he does with Motley Crue. So I think that's cool.
That's the stuff, it's like when you finally, when the time comes, you're whipped into shape for stuff, you really have to hustle to become better at something. I think that experience is invaluable, I really enjoy being pushed, even when it's things that I might not see the correlation between, maybe Widetrack and marching band. I can totally understand if that's not the first thing that jumps to your mind when you think of Widetrack or marching band. But I still think that the crossover and the synthesis is really invaluable.
Yeah, I think another thing is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. But I used to be in marching band when I was in high school too, and that for me was like one of the key best things I ever did for my drumming. And so fast forward to last year, Zach started working on his snare drumming. He was like, I want to be a snare drummer. I want to be on that snare drum in my junior year. I don't want to have to wait till my senior year. And so he and I would sit there and just kind of woodshed a lot of rudiments and all that kind of stuff. And he was bringing home some of the things that he was learning from marching band, and I could see like, wow, man, this stuff has come a long way since I was his age. And seeing some of the video and stuff of what they're doing, it's a high level of precision and ability that is demanded of these kids. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out, the precision in all of this, because you're playing with so many different musicians, and you got to be in step, you got to be in key, you got to be locked into one another. A 4-piece band or a 5-piece band or even a 3-piece band, you can get into the pocket because there's just a handful of you there. But when you got something huge like that, I mean, you got to be on your toes. That's kind of like boot camp, I suppose, for a musician.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's and I think it helps going back to the smaller ensembles, developing a pocket is if you can lock in with 100 people, you can most certainly lock in with 4 or 3
Definitely.
or 2. So
definitely.
I think it's
there's
really
something
cool.
that there's that fine line that we're always trying to be cognizant of with where you've got like your rush, your precise musicianship and your chops and everything, but then there's a certain feel of I don't want to say sloppiness, but looseness of like a Black Sabbath, and sometimes it's really easy for it's kind of like left brain and right brain. It's really easy for musicians to kind of go in one direction or the other. It's to try and maintain, with all the precision and all the theory that I'm learning, I got to remember that there's soul and feel and just cutting loose,
Mojo.
The mojo.
There you go.
The mojo. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
That's one of our criticisms of progressive rock. Where we always kind of try to maybe we kind of go overboard with it sometimes, trying to differentiate ourselves from the newer progressive rock bands. But to us, there's a lot of sterility in a lot of those bands. They've kind of, that's one of the things we love about Rush is, Rush didn't just learn from like Yes and King Crimson and Genesis. They were listening to Cream and Zeppelin, and there was a lot of mojo in that music. And a lot of progressive bands tend to focus a bit much on the intricacies of things, but you go to see these bands live and they're just standing there because they can't move because they're so, and we respect that greatly, but for us it's like we also love the band like Queens of the Stone Age, who's just up there just rocking, just sweating and really giving that that foundational like you were talking about John Bonham earlier.
Yeah.
That there's something about that. John Bonham was not a technical virtuoso, and yet he's regarded as the greatest rock drummer of all time.
Yeah. And the thing of it is with Bonham, he was insecure about his own playing. He was constantly needing reassurance that he was the guy right up to the time he died. There was an article my co-host Stephen G's had brought up where they were saying that the night that Bonham drank himself to death, he was in a mood because he didn't feel he was up to par for the new material, that they should get somebody else to come in and do this because he just was. And they're like, come on, dude, you're John Bonham.
Yeah.
So and there's probably a lot of musicians like that.
Yeah, that's a common story with this. Not a lot of music. Like I've read, Eddie Van Halen was always his own worst critic, and a lot of guys like that. I think there's a syndrome they call it, where imposter syndrome is what they call it, where a lot of these guys that are great, they don't feel like they've earned these grand titles that people have bestowed upon them, and they kind of feel like But that's part of the humility that makes those musicians great to me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. They feel like they're not up to par, and, they put in more time and they're studying and they're, trying to make themselves better, even though they're actually quite good.
Yeah.
Talking about Eddie Van Halen, what you just mentioned, Eddie Van Halen, and I saw where somebody was talking about, he was so humble in his playing that, because he thought that there were other guitarists that were better than him. And, so he didn't put himself on that rock star pedestal the way some do. Yngwie Malmsteen, two greatest guitarists to Yngwie Malmsteen is himself and his ego.
Yeah. Yeah, we always have a good laugh about old Ingve.
And he's good, but you know what? He's never had that commercial success because he can't write a commercially successful song, but he's a fantastic player. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
But he just, I don't know, he's just too arrogant. And I've got a few of his albums, but so let's change gears here for a minute. And Ron, when did Widetrack first form? Give us a brief history for somebody who didn't catch you the first time you were on the show.
Yeah, so I was always a drummer in bands, and I had a few original projects around the Detroit area, and played, in around the United States and Canada, and but when these bands would break up, I would have to start from scratch, and so somewhere around the 90s, I was kind of started writing songs, just in private, just for myself. And in 2006, my father passed away, and I just kind of had this epiphany of how short life is, and how it's kind of silly to ask for permission to do things that make you happy. And one of the things I came to realize was I really like writing songs, and I want to put out this album. It was kind of like a new statement of purpose. I want to write an album and put it out. I have some friends that help me with some of the musical parts, and so I did that, the first Widetrack album, and I just really loved the experience. And from there, it just kind of grew. Obviously, it took a few years for Zach of Zach being alive for him to jump on board. But 2016, I think, he joined up, and the band has kind of taken on a new not a new identity as much as just it's under new management. And I've been the only writer up to this point. Well, now it's Zach is writing the music, and I am writing drums and vocals and lyrics, and it's a nice partnership. It's kind of what I always wanted, all through making the earlier Widetrack albums. I had friends that I was trying to get interested in this stuff, but a lot of guys our age are just kind of falling into the cover band thing, and they're not really into doing originals so much. So it kind of took this situation coming about to finally have a partner and have somebody that I can write with. And Zach just passed me up on the guitar a few years back. I mean, just by leaps and bounds. And so it kind of took the music in a little bit different direction, but it just so happened, at least in my mind, where the music has been kind of evolving towards that anyway. So it's interesting because when we put our album out last year, The Unwakening, that was the first thing that Zach and I ever collaborated on. And you can hear the songs where I'm still writing some guitar parts, and you can kind of hear us morphing into, okay, I'm not writing guitar anymore. It started off with, I think the first song we ever wrote together was Warriors. And that one was both of us writing on guitar. And we had a few of those songs, and little by little, finally, Zach was just like, okay, well, I've got all of these guitar parts. And I could clearly see that there was nothing I could add guitar-wise. And it's cool because it enables me to just focus on the vocals and the drums, which is a handful as it is. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at this point.
Okay. Now, with Zach joining the band, Zach, what motivated you to begin making music, and how long have you been doing this now? I know it wasn't just like one day you decided, hey, Dad, can I join the band? Sure, come on in, son. I'm guessing that, this is something that did it start, listening to music, and you developed a love for listening to music and you wanted to start making it. What motivated you?
So I'm sure many guitar players, many people can relate with this. My introduction to guitar was maybe through music only subconsciously, but consciously, I should say. It was, I see my dad playing guitar a lot, and look at how many friends he has. Look at how many people he talks to. Look at how many people think he's awesome because he's a guitar player. Obviously that's what it is. So I'm like, okay, if I play guitar, I'm gonna be super popular and have a bunch of friends, maybe even get some ladies. I soon came to figure out, way sooner than most, that, okay, this has not worked. I have no ladies, the same number of friends, and just this slab of wood with some metal strings on it. So it started off pretty slow. For the first couple years that I even owned a guitar, I wasn't super serious. But once I got into middle school, really that's when I started, keeping score. And, I would play almost every day and, learn songs that were challenging to me at the time, which were, Led Zeppelin riffs and, Rush eventually, as I got more into bass playing. But yeah, like most bass players, which is how I got my introduction to the band, I was a guitar player that was, very naive. And I heard, oh, well, I've got a band, that is my dad, with no bass player. And if you play bass for this, it could be really cool. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. And, with a little bit of motivation and growing pains and such, it eventually worked out, By 2016, on my dad's birthday, I had played my first gig with Widetrack at the third album's CD release party, I believe.
No, we just played a show. We
just that house concert, yeah. So not even a CD release party, but a very important show to me, nonetheless.
Cool.
And after that, I was now the bass player for this band. My place had been solidified given the show, and the other guitarist in the band, Ryan Burleson, who was the guitarist on Widetrack 3. Had a lot of other things going on. It was harder to get together to write as quickly as my dad and I wanted to. And this was kind of at the time where I was gaining more confidence on the guitar. So I said to him, hey, I'm going to do the guitar for this. And we parted ways. But, he's doing awesome things, and it's really, really cool to see his energies put to really amazing projects. And it's also really nice to just have the total freedom to do whatever I want with these songs, And I guess it's worked out for me because I'm interested in guitar and bass. I don't really care about drums and vocals. And
well, that was my next
my
question.
Dad, kind of the opposite is true. So
yeah, my next question would be:
yeah.
Do you see any time that you would ever want to sing a song, lend your vocals to it? So you're not interested in that, huh?
Well, I think the issue for me is that I've listened to music for many, many years now, but I seldom ever practice my vocals, So I think it's easier when you start off and, you know, it's fresh and exciting, and, you know, maybe you're in high school or middle school or whatever, and you feel like, you know, you've got license to suck. Like, it doesn't hurt your feelings too bad, but I know it's my ego talking, but I just feel like I would need to work way harder, put way more time into it to really get to the level that I'm comfortable with, or that I would say is worth disrupting the natural order of things. And so to me, I'd rather put all that time and energy into making my guitar parts that much better. You know, I mean, I pride myself on my guitar work, and I think it's hilarious to think that I pride myself on it, because I listen back to it after a couple months and I wonder what the heck I was thinking at some parts. But yeah, I do enjoy singing though. Maybe just for something with a little less pressure, you know.
Yeah, you know,
one
that's
of the
the
things
story
that we do in our cover band. We have a cover band called The Vintage, and Zach has sang a couple. Or Zach and I will do duo acoustic gigs, and Zach has a few songs that he sings there, and so it's kind of dipping his toe into the water a little bit, and he sings a lot of harmony, so he's working his way on in that regard, and so I'm hopeful that he'll be singing more in the future.
Yeah,
like everything.
you're definitely talented, Zach, playing bass and guitar. Now that whole story about, you know, your dad's band needs a bass player. That's the thing with bass players. Back in the early '80s, I sang in my cousin's band. It was a metal band, and we went through a revolving door of bass players for a while there. I'm not involved in music other than as a huge fan of music nowadays, but back then you start running into these bass players, and they were all wannabe guitar players who realized that all these bands had all these guitar players, so somebody needs to play bass, so they would pick up the bass. I think it's Rick Savage from Def Leppard. He told the story about that, where he was trying to get into bands as a guitar player, then he started noticing all these bands had openings for bass players. So he traded in his guitar for a bass, couldn't play, but he would show up with a bass. And he'd get into these bands until he got to the point where he was good enough to keep a rhythm going with the drummer. But he even said it. He said he plays bass, but it's not for some great love. It was a need. You know, Def Leppard needed a bass player, so I became the bass player.
Story is old as time. I've heard the same was true about Geddy Lee. He got a phone call, needed to play bass, was half a bass player, half a guitar player at the time in high school or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I will say being in demand is a much better feeling rather than being in, you know, like under demand. Like I, as a bass player, was the MSBOA, which is like Michigan's youth musician organization, whatever. I was the jazz bass player for the All-State Jazz Ensemble. So just goes to show you. I mean, like, nobody plays bass. And sure, you know, I put in a lot of hours on bass. And I would like to think that I've gotten fairly good. But still, it's like bass hours compared to guitar hours. It's like talking dog years, you know. It's like one bass hour is 7 guitar hours, you know, if you think about how much practice you have to do to get the same amount of phone calls, you know.
Yeah, well, they say, you know, like the term would be bass just isn't as sexy as guitar. You got the guitar heroes. But Geddy Lee, people started picking up the bass because of Geddy Lee. And I think, you know, back in the 80s, Cliff Burton of Metallica, he played it like a lead instrument. Steve Harris from Iron Maiden plays it like a machine. And these guys made it to where people suddenly started wanting to be bass players.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what surprised me the most is coming to high school, you know, I was always familiar with my dad's music scene and, you know, all these bands that you're talking about and, you know, the general stereotypes of bass players. I expected, you know, I'm going to play bass and, you know, get all these opportunities playing all these bands because nobody else is going to play bass. I get to high school, find out that's totally the opposite. Nobody plays guitar, nobody plays drums, everybody plays bass. I was like, am I dreaming? What the heck happened? And I think so many more bands, newer bands, still feature bass, but don't necessarily feature super prominent electric guitar, acoustic guitar. And it's a weird shift, you know. It's now bass is the oversaturated instrument, which is like, you know, a fantasy island. But it's finally, it feels really good to see bass get its due, you know.
Yeah, that's today's music scene. You know, talking about bands that don't feature the guitar. Imagine Dragons. You know, they're one of the biggest bands out there right now, and you don't really hear the guitar. You hear it's a heavy bass and drum oriented stuff, but that guitar isn't up front and in your face. But they still sound like a heavy band. Okay.
Sure.
Now, you guys have a brand new EP out called Lineage, and I've got some tracks here that we can play from it. Tell us a little bit about that. How did this come about? I know it's not the typical way you would come up with an album, so give us the history of this.
Lineage is kind of a strange little chapter in the Widetrack story. I wrote these songs in 2012. The time after my father passed away was a really fertile songwriting period, and I just kept writing and writing. And there were these certain songs that kind of came out that were, at the time, they were a little bit too raw, I guess. I kind of felt a little too close to them, and I'd try to sing them, and I wouldn't be able to sing them, and it was just too emotional. So I just shelved them. I recorded all my parts, all my drums and vocals and guitar parts, and just saved the tracks, just shelved them. And since the pandemic, you know, we've been trying to fill up time with that we would normally be playing live. And I kind of went back and revisited these songs, and I had a different perspective on them. You know, it was more enough time had passed where there was enough emotional distance from them where I could get a little bit more objectivity. And I thought, you know, wow, this would be really cool to do like what I call a retroactive collection of songs, where I would take those old tracks and Zach put bass and some lead guitar to them and then mixed them. And so it's kind of like the past and present merging. And I still, all of this stuff is out on Spotify and everywhere else now. And I still dated it as 2012 because it, for all intents and purposes, they are 2012 songs. And we didn't want to interrupt the current chronology, I guess, of Widetrack's music, where from this point on, it's going to be stuff that Zach writes and that I write with Zach. So we kind of backdated that, and it kind of fits. It just so happens there's a big gap in our catalog from our second Widetrack album and our third Widetrack album. There's like, what is it, like 7 years or something like that? 2009, no, probably, yeah, 2009 to 2016. And
that's kind of like a Metallica gap.
Yeah, actually 2018, now that there's like a 9-year gap in there. So it kind of, it slides in there nicely. We've got another one that we're going to do this year from 2015. That's kind of a similar thing. And so they're just 6-song EPs that I'm going to take the old tracks and then have Zach put some of his stuff in. And Zach's mixing everything as well. So he's really learned a lot about engineering and mixing, that's kind of his thing. In addition to being the bassist and guitarist of Widetrack, he's trying to develop as a recording engineer as well. So
again, it all kind of ties back into whatever is in demand. You know, I mean, most bands now have somebody that's kind of the designated engineer, just because of the fact that getting somebody to mix your music is expensive. It can be hard. You know, you don't always find somebody that will do a good job and do the way that you want. There's so many different variables, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you connect with music.
Yeah, I think, and plus you're close to the music. You know how it's supposed to sound. So I think it would probably, you know, even back in the day, I know like when they would mix Led Zeppelin albums, Jimmy Page was always in there, very hands-on with that because he knew what sound he was looking for. So, I mean that's
absolutely, and that's the key. That's the key.
Okay,
yeah,
so we're gonna.
That I was always really. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something I was always really impressed with Zach was that from the very get-go he really understood like the vibe of the Widetrack music, and when we would sit down to write stuff, he would say, "Hey, I came up with this guitar part," and I would hear it, I would be like, "That's so Widetrack," and it was really a real natural thing from the get-go. It wasn't anything where I had to say yes or no. I mean, pretty much everything he's ever shown me, I was like, "Oh, you totally get it, man." And I really noticed that coming into play when we did these songs where he was putting guitar parts over these existing songs and bass parts, and they just fit so well. They really kind of, I think that was the other thing with these songs is they were kind of naked back in the day. It was just me on guitar, and they just needed something, and Zach provided that with these songs. So I was really excited once they were finished because I was like, okay, now I'm real happy to present these to people because they have what they need, and I just didn't understand at the time that they were missing Zach's contribution.
So now they're Widetrack. So all right, I bought Lineage, and I've got that on my iPod now. And the other day when I was out mowing the lawn, I was listening to it, preparing for the show. What tracks would I put on? And this one, the first one I'm going to play, is my current favorite, The Thread. So how about we play that?
Oh, great. Cool.
All right. This is The Thread. This is The Thread by Widetrack.
Try not to forget when there is a wine. Celebrate the night.
All right, that was The Thread by Widetrack. This song, when I was listening to it the first time out there, there's like this really cool Pink Floyd vibe to it, but it's still undeniably Widetrack. And I can say that because I've got a couple of other Widetrack albums on my iPod, and you've got this unique sound, Ron, your vocals especially, just this great, unique sound that just, when I hear it, if I've got it on shuffle and one of your songs pops up, oh, Widetrack. So
that's awesome, man.
What's the idea behind this song, The Thread?
I wrote that for Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
cool.
It was our families. We all have things that we would change and things that we would.
Oh yeah.
That we're thankful for. And it's about the future. It's about the, I think as we get along, and a lot of people are very anti-kids these days. I'm quite the opposite. I think Zach's generation is the best hope we have. But that, looking at that and just at our own personal family, I always look to him as kind of the, there's a line that says you could be the one who mends the thread. And it's more about learning from the past and rectifying, for, okay, well, here's where my dad got it right. And here's where maybe not so much. And, he's just a man.
Yeah.
I remember when I realized my own dad was just a man. He, it was like, wow, he's not this Superman that I always thought he was. He's just a guy doing his best, and he didn't always get it right. But we're human, and
yeah,
there's.
I think there's. I can definitely connect with that. Personally in my own life, and then like you said with your dad, with my dad, my father passed away in 2012, and just that realization that he's not Superman, that he's a human, and he made a lot of mistakes, and then I followed in his footsteps and made a lot of my own mistakes. That's part of being human. That's part of growing, though. There's a whole life behind me that there's huge chunks that I wish I could change. I really do. I made a mess of a lot of stuff, but you can't. So where are you now? And you're able to look back from where you are now and say, okay, I came through that. I'm not going to do that again or that, but you learn, and that's the growing process. And if you live to be 100, you're still going to be looking back and saying, okay, and looking forward, what do I need to change to move forward? So, it's being human, like you said. We're all there.
Yeah, when I can look at one of the things about becoming a parent myself was, I would look at the way that I was raised, and I said, I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to try this method here, where I would, ever since Zach was little, I would just try to let him make choices and try to see the world through his eyes. And, I think a lot of us that are approaching middle age or whatever, we need that fresh perspective. I know a lot of burned out people my age. They're done believing in the magic, and they're done believing in hope, and they're very cynical and they're very jaded. And I just Zach saved me from that. I was, I'm like, hey, I remember, and it takes you back. It's like, I remember how I used to believe in the magic, and that doesn't have to die. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, music is a great example of like, why did I start playing? You know, it's just because it's so damn fun, such an exhilarating high when it's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And to recapture that with my son, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, that's a blessing that you've got that time to do this with your son. Listen, we've got a caller. You want to take a caller?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, caller. You are on the air. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Cindy from Michigan.
Hi, Cindy. Welcome to the show.
I
Hi,
want
Cindy.
to say I think they are a great school group, and I really appreciate the fact to hear a father and son, a new group, and I look forward to hearing some more of their music.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. You're from Michigan?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
How'd you like that snow we got today?
We didn't get any up here. I'm in central Michigan. But I look forward to hearing more of your songs, and I will be looking them up. And I thank you for have a good evening.
Okay, well, thanks for calling, Cindy, and we're getting right. We'll play another song here
Cindy.
shortly.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Now, the recording process, we kind of touched on that just a little while ago before we played the song. Do you record using, which is the standard nowadays, I guess, Pro Tools, or are you still getting, like, booking studio time?
We do everything ourselves. We, for a while, we were recording ourselves and mixing in studio. And then there's even been instances where we've recorded in studio and mixed studio as well, done the full package. But ever since, these technologies have gotten so much better, we've, taken it upon ourselves to learn how to use these tools. And
well, that's cool because
actually, to answer your question, we do use Pro Tools, and we mic everything up ourselves right in our living room. Lots of trial and error, discover, kind of learn the ropes ourselves. But I would recommend it.
Yeah, that's cool. Today's musicians have it made. I mean, because they can record their own music and they can sell it over the internet and reach the whole world. I remember back in the 80s, it was the big deal if you got a Fostex 4-track recorder. That was a big deal. Nowadays,
that's funny. I have a friend who sent me a picture last night of one of those, and he's like, hey man, he's got this retro sickness. He's buying all this retro gear, and he sent me a picture last night. As he check out this Fostex recorder, this 8-track that and I'm like, why did you buy this? And he said, just nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been great. Like Zach uses Pro Tools, and that's what we make. He does all of his mixing. But I have Logic, which is like a little bit more streamlined version of Pro Tools. And it's got its own, it's just a little easier for me. So I will do all my vocals and drums here at our rehearsal space, which is my apartment. And then I'll bring the tracks to him. And he's starting to get into some of these new guitar modeling interfaces.
They've come a long way as well. For a while, I was very much a stickler about having real, genuine tube amp sounds. It has to be a Marshall full set. I'm not accepting anything else. But ever since trying these new modeling amps out, I guess it's just a lesson to take with everything. It's like give it everything a fair shot. You know, I mean, I didn't think I was going to be a fan, but they serve their purpose for what they're made for, and I am really impressed. So.
Cool.
What's the new one that you're using, Zach?
Is one of Neural DSP's modeling amps, which honestly, they are kind of the kings of guitar and bass modeling. They've got, I think, maybe 10, 12, 14 different modeling amps, and whichever one you go with, they're all immaculate. And what's cool is I actually got to try like pretty much all of them. Do free trials and stuff, which is also pretty sweet, and messing with all of these sounds, you know, really getting outside of my comfort zone. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that's what's cool about music. That's the experimental part, going in there and, yeah, this sounds really cool, or that doesn't. But, hey, if we mix that with this, you guys today, music makers today, you've got it made, really, because you have everything right there at your fingertips.
Amen.
Oh, great, yeah. All these new, all the guitar and bass on Lineage that Zach did was done virtually with the interface. I forget which one. Was it the Gojira one?
Gojira
one. I sound like that boomer guy trying to pronounce the cool band's name.
Was that Gojira?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's all done, Bert, and we started messing around with that, and it was like, holy cow, man, this, because in the past we've been in the studio with our buddy Andy Paddlin, and he would just kind of run it up the flagpole for a second. He would be like, hey, check it out, I got this new interface, you know, it's virtual guitar amp, what do you think? And the technology just wasn't there at the time, you know, and we're very, very much sticklers for, like, we record with a Marshall amp with an SM58 mic and just the tried and true studio workhorses, you know. But they're finally starting to get to a point where, like, okay, there's a sound that we can use, and now you have all these different treatments on these amps, and you can do so much with them, just in terms of EQing them and getting them just the way you want. And then you lay down the track, and then you decide later on, oh, you know, I'm going to change my guitar sound, and the whole track is preserved, and you can just, it's just amazing. You change the guitar sound, change the EQ. Just amazing what you can do these days. And that's really the ultimate deciding factor for us, is the facilitation of these things. You know, it just makes it that much easier to experiment and find the right thing for the song.
You guys want to take another call?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Hello, caller. You are on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's Phil. I'm from Charlevoix, Michigan.
Hi, Phil. Welcome to the show. You got a question or a comment for Zach and Ron?
Yeah, thanks. I was just listening tonight, and I'm just really impressed with this whole operation, the father-son thing, and the music that you're making here. I mean, just, you know, for me personally, you know, I like Tom Waits and what is usually described as, you know, fringe type of performers and artists, and this kind of, to me, kind of falls into that category because it doesn't fall neatly into a specific niche or genre, and I admire that in musicians that are just, you're doing what you do without worrying so much about how it's going to be received to the general public. At least, I mean, that's how I'm reading it. And to me, that's what it's about, you know, and people get it or they don't. But if they don't, you're not going to turn into the Archies or whatever to try to pull them in, you know. And that's art to me.
I agree.
I'm always on the lookout for, you know, performers that are out there, you know, hey, we're making music, and if this isn't what you're digging, push on. You know, find your group. But this is what we do. And what I'm hearing from your style is kind of that uncompromising thing. We're expressing ourselves here and not really looking to bend ourselves to suit anybody, but if you get it, you get it. If not, well, okay, that's cool too. But I'm always on the lookout for new musical talent. And as again, you know, myself personally, it's kind of hard to find. And I just really like your style and your sound here, and I just wanted to call in and give you a holler on that, and wish you the best on going forward and making some success here. And I congratulate you with signing on with Fresh Ink Group, because I think you can't go wrong here. And I just wanted to call in and express that to you, and wish you the best going forward. It's not always the easiest path, going your own thing instead of appealing to the masses, but it seems like that's what you're doing, and I admire that, and I just wanted to say so.
Well, thank you so much. I think we share lots of the same values.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot, and keep on keeping on. Night.
Well, thanks for calling in, Phil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Betcha.
Yeah, best to you, Phil.
Yeah, you know, what he was saying is you don't compromise, which is really cool. You're not going to turn into the Archies. And there was a lot of bands that, you know, that came out back in the 70s and the 80s that I got into the first album and the second album, and then they decided they weren't selling enough, so they would change up. And by the third album, it's like, what did you guys do? Motley Crue was one of those bands. I loved that first album, and then Shout at the Devil came out, and I thought, this is one of the greatest albums ever, man. This thing was heavy, and it just was full of attitude. And then they come out with Theater of Pain, and it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a decent album, but it's not Motley Crue. The change was just so drastic. It wasn't. I saw him on that tour, and then I saw him on the Dr. Feelgood tour. They're still a great live band, but just the change in the sound, I think they lost a lot of fans. Of course, by then I had jumped over to thrash metal, so I was into like Exodus and Testament and Metallica and Megadeth.
Yeah. It's funny that there was something that happened when Bon Jovi came on the scene. Bon Jovi and Poison, you know, metal used to be basically just dudes, you know, and then the ladies got invited to the party, and I get it, man. It's you're in a band, you're playing, you want to play for some ladies, not just a bunch of dudes. But I don't know what it did to the heavy metal was, you know, when people, you know, I'll often hear people, they'll accuse me of, they'll say, oh, you were into that hair metal stuff, and I'll have to say, listen, let's be clear, I was into Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and Dio, and you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I said that's a far cry from Bon Jovi and Poison and Winger and all that stuff, which was clearly striving to appeal to the ladies.
Yeah. But, you know, interesting you mentioned Winger. My older brother put me up on some recent Winger albums because I was just never a Winger fan. I liked Kip Winger as a bass player. I saw him when he was with Alice Cooper. The guy was a great bass player. Is a great bass player. Those first couple of albums, I just didn't care for his voice. And my brother put me up on some recent ones. He's like, you got to listen to this. These guys are playing some heavy stuff these days. They're
wow.
as heavy, if not heavier than Metallica now. That was one of the comments on one of their videos. It's funny how Metallica used to run them down, and now Winger's heavier than Metallica. They're playing some really cool stuff. And in fact, I bought an album that they did in, I think it was 2016. I just downloaded that at my brother's behest. So, they're doing some decent stuff. That hair metal thing, when that started popping up, Warrant and Poison and all that stuff, I saw Poison in concert twice back in the day. They put on a great live show. I just wasn't a real big fan of their music. But I had an ex-girlfriend that wanted to go see him, so I bought tickets to go see him. And then my little brother wanted to go see him, so I took him to go see him as well. And I ended up enjoying the show. But the whole hair metal scene, I was into the thrash at the time. I was into Maiden and Judas Priest. I was into the new wave of British heavy metal. That was my thing. And the thing of it is nowadays, I don't mind that stuff. I'm a music fan, and I've got all kinds of stuff on my iPod. I've got Dave Brubeck and Miles Davis and Robert Johnson from the 30s. I've got all kinds of different stuff, and then I've got all the Rush and the Pink Floyd and the Anthrax and all that stuff. So music to me is music. But back then, when you see how that music started changing the whole scene, it went from, like you said, it was a bunch of dudes. Yeah, the guys from Metallica wore jeans and T-shirts and leather jackets or jean jackets. And then here comes Poison with the hair teased up and the lipstick and the eyeliner, and it's like, and the girls' shirts that they were wearing. It's like, come on, dudes, what are you guys doing? But
yeah, you started seeing it in bands that like Ozzy and Triumph.
Yeah.
A lot of bands like that were trying just to kind of keep up with what was going on. It was the mid '80s was an interesting time for music. It's when the '70s finally fully gave way to the '80s, and MTV had a lot to do with that too, where it became a visual medium more than ever. It's just a weird intersection of factors that happened in music at that time.
MTV. That was the big thing, because now it's visual. And what are you going to do to stand out? Well, I'm going to tease my hair up really high, and I'm going to put lipstick on and sing about don't need nothing but a good time. Well, listen, we're in overtime now, so before we run out of time, how about we play Vultures?
Oh, okay.
You want to hear that? Okay, here we go. This is Vultures by Widetrack.
Precious few years, nary a tear for it all. Morning delayed till your estate settled down. Lawyers and friends pluck their 2 cents from your eye.
All right, that was Vultures by Widetrack. That can be found on their Lineage EP, so get out there and grab a copy of that. I've got it, and it rocks. That's got some stellar bass work on that song. That's that little middle piece where you can really hear the bass. Man, that's just so cool sounding. Good work, Zach. You guys there? Hello.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I dig the bass. Zach kind of just had a go with that. It was pretty much the first take, just banged it out, and I was like, yeah, I think that's what that needed. So
yeah, you guys you have a really cool vibe to your music. Just a really cool mood, and that's, to me, is the sign of great music when it's got a mood to it. Because there's a lot of stuff that's just, all right, it's kind of cool, you can dance to it, whatever. But then there's that stuff that you really get into because there's a mood there, and it sets your mood. So I think that's cool.
We are a sucker for the vibe.
Sucker for the vibe. All right, we are about out of time. What was that? You were saying?
Just saying, saying thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, where can listeners find the music, and where can they find you on social media? Let's point people in the right direction.
So our website is widetrackband.com. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, which we often send out exclusive stuff that only the mailing list gets. That's widetrackmusic.com. And then all of our socials are pretty much Widetrack Band. Our YouTube is just Widetrack. We're mostly on Facebook and, our mailing list. So Twitter occasionally and Instagram. But, pretty much everything's Widetrack Band.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking time out on your Wednesday night to come and sit and talk with us.
Always a pleasure, Beem.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it was a blast.
And I look forward to having you guys on again when you get that the new album or the new EP done, whichever comes first. The new old EP, I guess you could say. But I'd like to get you guys on again sometime too. Maybe over the summer. And hopefully you guys will be able to do some live gigs by then, and we can promote those shows too. So.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Give our best to Steven as well.
All righty, I will. All right, listeners, remember, if you missed this episode or any other episode, you can find each episode in the archive at freshinkgroup.com, beemweeks.com, stephengs.com, under the podcast tabs, and go to the YouTube and type in Fresh Ink Group, and you will find our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, and find us on Spotify at Voice of Indie, all one word, and we are there. Now, next week, Stephen G's returns and will occupy his usual place down there in Alabama. And our guest will be author and entertainer Kanoy K. So be sure to tune in and check that out. With that, thanks again, guys, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks so much, Beem. We look forward to talking to you soon, my friend.
Our pleasure.
Right.
You as well.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
You've been a part of Voice of Indie, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at freshinkgroup.com and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.